I thank the chairman. I would note that we've had a number of conversations about the legislation of the Senate. I associate myself with the remarks of the gentleman from North Carolina that the legislation from the Senate was very specifically designed to deflect by my Democratic colleagues their utter and complete failure when it comes to the border. That is precisely why that bill was done. It was done heading into an election season knowing full well that it would fail, had zero chance of success, so they could try to pass the buck. The fact is it was flawed on numerous levels. Specifically, it would have codified President Biden's failed asylum rule, which eliminates the adversary component of immigration proceedings, meaning ICE attorneys are no longer part of the process, eliminating cross-examination. Catch and release, it specifies that migrants who cannot be detained will be released and placed under the supervision of, quote, alternative detention programs. It would have codified releases, which flies directly in the face of the requirement to detain. It would have enshrined FLORAs for family units and unaccompanied alien children. The bill mandates families are released in the interior under alternatives to detention and maintains the status quo of releasing unaccompanied alien children. And by the way, those numbers didn't even apply to the outrageous caps that set the standard flow close to 5,000, which would have meant 1.8 million per year. It put lawyers in place for illegal aliens to the tune of $350 million. Parole, it would have codified and expanded the unlawful use of parole. The unlawful use, which flies in the face of what the gentlelady was just describing, because in the statute, the specific language says, in his discretion, parole in the United States temporarily under such conditions as he may prescribe only on a case-by-case basis. This whole notion of categorical parole flies directly in the face of what the statutes contemplate, literally in black letter text. And the administration ignores it. And they do so intentionally. And they do so in such a way that floods the zone, so that we end up with situations like we had 1,000 illegal aliens from Venezuela rushed and nearly breached the El Paso port of entry. We've had numerous situations constantly dealing with the border because this administration is blatantly disregarding the specific text of the law. The Senate bill would have codified this mass migration efforts by the administration. They did it intentionally. That's why the Senate Democrats wanted that. Yep. They did it on purpose so that my colleagues can do exactly what they're doing in this hearing, trying to deflect their failure that is causing untold damage to the American people, causing untold deaths of fentanyl poisoning to the children, including in my district, where I represent. The number of people throughout the state of Texas that are suffering as a consequence of this, the amount of money that Texans are having to spend, the extent to which DPS and our troopers are having to spend time at the border doing the job the federal government refuses to do. And very importantly, with all due respect to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who said otherwise, the extent to which Border Patrol agents are delighted that we impeached Mayorkas, are delighted that Governor Abbott sent people down to the border to do what the federal government won't do. They are so thankful, calling us specifically saying, thank you for doing that. Thank you for putting the razor wire down there. Thank you for standing up in Eagle Pass. And thank you for impeaching Mayorkas, because they're sick of it. They're sick of a secretary who lied about them, who literally knew and had a briefing specifically that there was no whipping of Haitian migrants, and yet went to the microphone and perpetuated that false trope that somehow these overwhelmingly Hispanic Border Patrol agents were acting racist in saying they were whipping Haitian migrants, which was clearly false based on every photo that was put forward. That is your Secretary of Homeland Security. That is the face of the Biden administration. And that is what my Democratic colleagues want to run away from, because they know it's a complete and total failure. They know that it's why the president is polling completely in the toilet, because the entire nation knows that wide open borders is endangering the American people, endangering the very migrants that my Democratic colleagues say they want to support in the false name of compassion, while they get sold into the sex trafficking trade, get abused by cartels, end up dying along the Rio Grande River, dying on ranches, while ranchers have to find dead bodies on those ranches in Texas. And then they want to come in here and say that my friend from North Carolina is somehow flawed for wanting to say we want to make sure that states have the power under the Constitution to go before a court and say they demand redress for the fact that the federal government refuses to do its job. Yes, we impeach the secretary. Yes, we should be able to go into court to enforce the laws that are put before us to make sure that our country is safe and to make sure that we can do the job that the federal government refuses to do. I yield back.